Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Claims Never Sleep. I'm joined by my favorite co host, Jen. Hey, Jen. How are
Hello.
you? How are you?
Good. Excited to be here today.
So, how's your week been going? Good? Good?
Well, my week has been going all right. We were on vacation this week and got back
Mhm.
late Tuesday night with three kids and coming back from the West Coast to the East Coast. So it's been a
Oh,
little bit of a challenging sleep week for us in this house.
yeah, a little time change in the mix. Long flights. always makes a good scenario for coming back and going back to school. So, I have two questions for you. One, when you were in California, did you have any run-ins or did you see anyone famous? My kids will want to know because you were in Los Angeles.
We
So,
were. So on par or on course with our office. It is always sunny in Philadelphia, and we ran into Danny DeVito.
really, I hate him.
Yes, we actually saw him on the Warner Brothers tour, and we think he was there. Double Philly shout out to
Mhm.
fill the crossover episode with Abbott Elementary for any of you fans
Yes,
out
we love
there.
Abbott.
And yeah, we saw Danny DeVito. We didn't get to talk to him or anything, but we had a spotting. That was our only celebrity spotting.
All right, I can't say I hate him. Let's not say that. I just think I find him a little gross.
Do you know, as a
So in
child,
person, is he that gross, or is it just the
no,
character?
no, it's just the character. And you know what I think that kind of feeds our perception on Danny DeVito is Matilda. In
Mhm.
that scene, I'll never get it out of my head. It runs through my head like it is like my Roman Empire when he's like, "I'm big, you're little. I'm smart, you're dumb." When he kind of yells at her, and that is what
Yeah.
gives her the powers or feeds into her powers. I don't know, that will always be my perception of Danny DeVito.
Okay. Well, that's better than mine. Well, that's exciting. So you come back from a vacation, uh, long travel, time change. What's your win for this week? What can we say positive about this week transitioning back into the real world?
So my win for this week is that it is officially 2 weeks to Halloween,
Mhm.
and I have 2 out of 3 costumes for my kids ordered. That is
That
huge.
is that is huge, and hopefully they don't change their minds.
And
That
they're
is.
not changing their minds once they're ordered. That is it. And I got my costume ordered as well. So
Oh.
we're almost there.
What do you disclose what you're going to be, or is it like a secret?
So every year I do a trunk or treat at the school and I
Mhm.
dress up with one of my kids and we do the corresponding trunk.
Okay.
So this year we are doing a WNBA theme.
Okay.
My daughter is going to be Caitlin Clark, and I am going to be a basketball hoop.
What a cute costume. I'm sure it'll look adorable on you.
Yep.
Very figure flattering.
I'm envisioning a lot of kids throwing like a
Balls
balloon
at
and
you.
ball right at my head, but it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Interactive. It's an interactive experience.
I was like, should I be like Sabrina Ionescu? Should I be a ref? And then I was like, nope, I'm going to be a basketball hoop.
You will be the star of the trunk or treat. I I can't wait to see the post about it and some pictures.
I mean, we've gotten pretty creative over there. I mean, I was Maleficent during
It's a
the
good one.
Descendants craze. I was Mrs. Incredible, and my
Mhm.
kids were dad, or my son was Dash. I mean, we've had last year, I was a cowgirl, and my daughter was a horse. I mean, we've come up with some pretty good ones over there. Oh, Mario and Luigi.
Yeah, I think I saw that picture. Yeah, we have a cowgirl this year too, but I it's not the traditional. She's not riding any horses. I think she's it's a different theme to the cowgirl outfit this year. Not one I love, but it is what it is. I'm super excited for our guest this week. We're joined by Meghan Eckstrom, and I just love her. I think you all will love her too. She's just so smart, and very just self-aware, and put a lot of focus on herself and her own personal growth, and just pushing herself through all those insecurities like we kind of all kind of feel, and she did the work and pushed through, and really feel strongly about her own personal development and her team. So I just she's a great listen. So with that, let's bring her in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.
Good morning, Meghan. Welcome to this episode of Claims Never Sleeps. I'm so happy to have you today. How are you?
I'm doing well. I actually took a poll from my team this morning. I said I'm going to be visiting a claims podcast, and it's called Claims Never Sleeps. And I just sort of asked to, like, please discuss, do we sleep or do we not sleep? Census was definitely not. So you're on point with your podcast title.
Yeah, well, yeah, the claims themselves never sleep. They're always moving and they're always piling up. There's never a shortage.
Them are never sleeping either, apparently.
Well, I'm so happy to have you on. You and I talked a little while ago, and just to hit it off during our conversation, I mean, I feel like we have a lot of cross paths. I mean, I grew up in New England and Connecticut. You're in Boston, but you work in Philadelphia. We're a Philadelphia firm here, or our office is in Philadelphia, so we have a lot of like crossover between us. So, and besides, we share a name, so different spelling though. But, one thing, I always ask every single person who comes on this podcast is how you got to where you are, because and maybe you'll be the first to tell me that you wanted to get into claims and that's how you got into claims. Prove me wrong, but I've yet to have anyone to come on to say this was their intended path. But I have very few who've come on and said it wasn't their intended path and they hate it. Like most are like, I'm so glad I found it. But what's your story?
Yeah, it is definitely. I'm not going to be the one to break the mold today. I'm sorry to disappoint. Definitely, like many, by accident. My first career was a mom, actually. I started my family really young, just out of college. And so career wasn't really on my mind initially. Just kind of did things to fill the financial gaps, like selling real estate and bartending and, things like that. And then when both of my kids were in school full time, daytime, I think my son was probably going into full day kindergarten. And I started saying, all right, well, it's time to use my degree. And I wanted to do something challenging. And I really wasn't sure what, because I hadn't spent a lot of time preparing for that. I was just sort of focused on my family for those first several years. And so I sort of was looking for a company. Like, I wasn't looking for the career necessarily. It was, where can I go that I know I can grow, I can learn, I can, be intellectually stimulated and things like that. And actually, my late father-in-law had kind of suggested that I start working at Amica Insurance. They were the family's insurance company. And, I'm talking to claims people, so you probably know it used to be a referral company. So you couldn't get into Amica unless you were referred by a friend or a family member with a really good loss history and things like that. And so they had been in Amica Insurance for decades. And he said, this seems like a good company. It's right down the street. Why don't you check that out? And so that was my first job out of the home in a professional capacity. So I started off as a customer service rep, just kind of standard PNC, taking FNOLs, just, kind of learning what the industry was all about. And after a few months, I just kind of started looking around saying, all right, like there's something to this. I can work with this. And I kind of started looking for new challenges and found them, became an outside adjuster, which was at the time multi-line. So I learned a little bit of both sides, auto, casualty, and the homeowner piece. And then got into some management roles and eventually got into like a home office kind of executive level position. And I spent, I think I spent 12 years there, and then kind of decided, I wanted to spread my wings a little bit. And I moved over to Pure Insurance, which was high net worth, relatively kind of new-ish at the time that I came on. And then spent a few years there before I was presented with an opportunity about 2.5 years ago to lead the claims department at the Philadelphia Contributionship. So a lot of syllables, but it's the oldest insurance company in the U.S. So it's kind of a cool story.
Before we hop into that, I want to backtrack to when you made the initial transition from like being home with your kids, and then starting to work full time. Like, how did your family take it? And I asked this because a friend of mine just recently did this. She has been staying at home and her daughter's in 6th and her son's in 4th, and recently just took a full-time job. And she was like, she's like, my son, he's not taking it well. He's not on board with mom going to the office. So how did that work for you and your family?
It was, I don't remember it being disruptive at all. I think because the majority of the time, the kids are there is during the day. So it was sort of matching up with the schedule. And I was just very fortunate that my husband's schedule he worked like a 7 to 3 job. So he was home when the kids got off the bus, and we were able to contribute on a really even kind of level where they saw it equally. They saw both of us, and we participated to the same extent, or like in our own ways. So it was a really nice balance for us. I can say that there was definitely a pull. I would miss more things than I did when I was staying home. But I don't know, it just never really seemed very disruptive for us. And I think I keep saying this to my daughter kind of offline. We were talking about our family dynamics. My daughter's in the process of getting married, and she's talking about what, her future career might look like as a mom. And I keep saying to her, every family figures it out. You find out what your balance is, and it's individual. You can never look at someone else's situation and say, oh, wow, I should try that, because it might not work for your family.
Yeah.
It's your financial situations are factors. Your kids' personalities are factors. Your own willingness to kind of be away from some of that activity at home, and your appetite for some of those things. So every family just kind of navigates it a little bit differently. And, sometimes it doesn't work. You can try something, and then you just try something different if it's not going to work out.
Jen can relate.
Yeah.
Jen, I don't want to take Jen's story from her, but Jen, she was practicing, and then she wasn't practicing, and then she was in claims, and then she wasn't practicing. I might be getting the order wrong.
No, that order's right. But it's kind of, as you're saying, and every stage of life is so different, and the demands are different. Like how you said you stayed home when your kids were little. That's when I worked, because I dropped all 3 of my kids off at daycare in the morning and picked them up at 4:30 in the afternoon. And then we just came home. Right. And as soon as school started and the after school activities exploded, that's when I had the harder time kind of shuffling things around. And so it's like every family is different. Every family dynamic is different. And your ability to manage it is a very personal decision, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
So why don't we, I have a few things I want to talk about. Why don't we jump into the Philadelphia contributorship?
Contributionship, but it is the most commonly mispronounced set of syllables out there. I just tell people, just call us TPC. It's a lot easier.
So tell us a little bit about what they do and what you are doing there.
Sure. So the company was founded actually in 1752 by Benjamin Franklin and some of his firefighter friends. So that's sort of our claim to fame. They just saw a need. They were a group of firefighters, and they saw the need for insurance, for a product to kind of help homeowners recover after something like a fire. And so they kind of created that first model in the US. It was modeled after some other kind of organizations, but they started it here. And basically it's the oldest successful insurance company still surviving today. So a lot of companies you'll kind of hear kind of look back at the model and say, this is the foundation of what this industry was all about. And so that was, the basics of kind of how it started and how it survived. There have been a few other companies that just didn't kind of make it. So we still get to keep that badge as long as one in the US.
That's great.
So as the head of claims, I have we're a small mid-Atlantic carrier. We're just 5 states. And I have relatively speaking, compared to some of the other bigger carriers in the space, we have, a fairly small team. I'm under 40 people, including the legal team. And we have our standard homeowner products and DP, a lot of like row homes, as you'd imagine, being from like the area where that flat roof, kind of unique, a little bit more unique. It's something that a lot of carriers don't jump up and down and say, hey, that's what we should have on the book, So we have found a niche that we kind of have tried to make that work. And then we have a casualty line, have some umbrella, a few different unique lines like service line. I guess that's like probably the more unique one. But yeah, otherwise we're a traditional PNC carrier, and we're kind of navigating through the space the same as some of the other carriers, just on a little bit of a smaller scale.
Yeah.
Despite having lived in Philadelphia and worked in insurance for so long, this is the first time it occurred to me that with the row home structure, I mean, it probably does add such a bigger risk when there is a fire or something going on, that it would kind of not just be a single. I mean, I now live in a rural area. I'm on like 8 acres, right? So like if something happened to my house, it would just be contained to my house. But yeah, I never really thought about that. So, I mean, is that a big influence in how you kind of price and write row homes?
Yeah, underwriting and pricing are all factors, and those have kind of snuck up on us in the past few years with all the challenges that we've been experiencing. But yeah, things like some of the underwriting guidelines say that we don't like the rest of connected home to be close to a restaurant, for example, because it carries a much higher risk, things like that. So yeah, definitely some unique considerations. And also on the claim side, because, if we have to deal with our home, then obviously we're probably dealing with some neighbors as well. And subrogation comes into play with some of those things. And yeah, definitely different from where I came from, being raised, at Amica, where, it was more of that rural kind of less risky, I would say, for the most part, kind of customer. And then, of course, high net worth being a very different scenario than what I'm dealing with today. But it's been nice because it's diversified kind of my understanding of the industry, and you see it from a very different perspective. So you learn a lot that way.
And it's funny, I never really, like, the way you're able to kind of categorize the different companies that you've worked at is a way I've never really thought about insurance companies. And it's very true, though. It's like a very different type of product, or a different type of product that you're kind of offering for different type of clientele. So it's like, your risk is different. Your claims probably look a little bit different. And honestly, like, how you're managing them is different.
Definitely. And I think there's things that you can take through as common threads and bring. And so I try to do that because, when you're at a company like Amica and you're known for customer service, and a high net worth at Pure, you're really known for making that experience special for the customer. I was able to bring that to TPC and to just really kind of remind everyone, hey, this isn't just a transaction. That, yes, we do a great job of customer service, but it's something that we'd love to be known for. We'd love to be associated with something like that. And I can kind of take some of those common threads and bring it to to a new organization that may not be, known for that particular thing. So there's a lot of those that are woven through.
And what do you find, though, now, like, what are some of the challenges, though, that you see within TBC? Like, what challenges are you seeing are coming across your desk or in your department or as a whole?
So I would probably answer this similar to many people in the industry right now. I mean, the cost, the inflation and the severity challenges are really the biggest thing on my radar, because we're looking at ways to try and pay what we owe. That is the essence of what we do as an insurance company, and to protect our homeowners' insurance, our insureds. And it's really hard to figure out what that number is when it creeps up on you significantly over like a very short period of time. And does the industry decide what we owe, or is there a black and white number? I mean, it's just trying to find that, and sometimes it's just an art form, and just trying to keep up with some of those challenges that we're faced with. Obviously, climate changes are a huge part of what we're seeing, and just the increased frequency of these severe convective events, and trying to plan for the unexpected. I mean, you can't plan for the catastrophe events. You just kind of expect them to happen at some point in time, and you create a plan that you're hopefully proactively ready for when the time comes. So some of those things. And I think that the people are also a challenge in terms of just staffing adequately and engaging staff so that you don't, have the turnover that would result in, some kind of loss of an efficiency or effective handling for the claims. So I always kind of have a list of priorities that I focus on every year, just so I can stay focused and I don't get distracted by shiny objects along the way.
It's so easy.
Uh, People is always my number one priority on that list, because if I can't get that piece right, then the rest of it won't fall into place. I can have a million different technical outcomes on my list of priorities, but I want my people piece to be right. I want people to kind of feel like they belong to the organization, that they have an important role, they understand what their role is and what value they bring, and to try and create a culture that facilitates good technical outcomes. So I kind of see that as a foundational piece.
And are most of your employees remote or in the office, hybrid? How does that work?
Yeah, so we're mostly remote. I mean, claims. We work from wherever we are, between being on cat duty and you're traveling, or if it's just you're on the road most of the day. So it's always sort of been that way. I came on board in 2022, and the reason they kind of recruited me from the Boston area was that they had been looking around in the Philly area and didn't necessarily, like, they found some great talented candidates, but they kind of said, well, listen, if everyone else is remote, do we really need someone who is within driving distance? So that's how I sort of came onto the list of potential candidates. And then when I came on board, obviously it was still post-pandemic, still kind of trying to figure out what that balance was going to be. And we've had a lot of really interesting conversations as a leadership team about, are we jumping on board with mandates, or are we going to kind of like be flexible and let this thing ride out? And those are really difficult conversations that we've had. But what we've landed on is that mandate is just something that is a slippery slope, and we didn't really want to get to that point. And I kind of stood up pretty firmly in my belief that in the claims world anyway, that's not something that was ever here before the pandemic or afterwards. Like, I had my first remote role with Pure starting in 2018. And when the pandemic came along, everyone was like, okay, turn on your cameras. And I was like, why? It's just like, this works. Everything's been working. Why do we need cameras all of a sudden? So it was funny. But, you just kind of go with the flow. And so now what we've done is we've just tried to find a nice balance. We want people to understand the value of being in an office together and learning, especially for newer people to the company or to the industry, to learn from each other. And so we have 1 week a month, we call our collaboration week, where everyone kind of knows that you're going to see as many people as you'll ever see really during that week. We have a lot of in-person meetings. We have just encourage a lot of that collaboration. And then the rest of the month, people are more than welcome to come in. Directors and above are asked to come in a couple of days a week so that they can kind of have that same kind of interaction. And then people sort of make decisions based on, those guidelines about, some people like to come in more often, so they know when they're going to find more people there. And some people simply can't because of the nature of their jobs. Other people are geographically not accessible to the office. And my team, I have people in pretty much every area where we do business. So I've got someone in Virginia. I've got a few people in Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and so we have people spread out that will never, frequently come into the office. But I do ask my team to come in twice a year all together, so we can learn together. We can kind of be in the same room. Just remember that culture. This past couple weeks ago, we had our in-person claims meeting for the fall, and we even did like a charity event together, so that we were kind of like all working on something kind of common. And that's the kind of culture that I want to try and remind people that we're here for. It's not just a job; it's also a community.
Yes. That is the challenge, though, and Jen and I talk about it all the time, like, because I'm in New Jersey, she's, in the Scranton area, and we're kind of spread out. And how do you create, a good office culture, but also, like, I want to work from home because it's the most it's the most efficient for me. So, it's a balance between what works. And I love the idea of having like that, a collaboration type week. Because what I was thinking of when you were talking about this, though, how do you manage, training new talent and younger talent? Because again, this is something Jen and I talk about too. Because some of that requires a little more hands-on training or some more, one-on-one or face-to-face can be a little more difficult in the remote atmosphere.
So for us, that is not very common. And again, I'll compare it to where I came up in the industry at Amica. There was a very clear established 7-week training program for someone who wanted to be an adjuster and learn the industry. So you were really, they took a ball of clay and they said, we're going to teach you everything. You don't need any experience whatsoever. We're going to show you how to read a policy and the customer service aspect. And then you build from that over the years. They had a very robust and effective training program. I'm very grateful for the years that I spent there for that reason, for many reasons, but that was a huge part of it because you just learn so much. And there are companies that are very good at that. For us, we're so small that we don't necessarily have the kind of resources that are perfect for that scenario. So I have not personally hired anyone with no experience. I mean, I really sort of need someone who's been in the industry a bit longer. I can sort of trust that they can take a program that we have homegrown in our claims team and give sort of like an onboarding more than a really robust technical training. It's like, here's who we are. This is how we do things. These are our best practices. And then sort of allow that culture to kind of like build over time. So, for someone who's just entering the industry, it's not the ideal spot to start. And I don't think that it would be something that we'd be super open-minded to. Having said that, we do have some people who, even outside of claims in different departments of our organization, came in either right out of school or started in a role that they were really interested in and then have grown within the organization. And we've been very successful at fostering that development because we have so much other talent that's already here. And then it comes into this mentoring piece, right? Like that's sort of the way that we're able to kind of help people learn our industry when they fall into it by mistake, like the rest of it, and then sort of find their way into one of the many different kind of spokes on that wheel that we have in the industry.
Yeah. When you were talking about like building your team though, and talking about the people working with, like, what are some of the like key characteristics that you're looking for from the people on your team?
I mean, I always start with technical because I think for me, one of our primary objectives is to pay what we owe. And I think that is such a fine art, but there's so many different cultural influences from different carriers and backgrounds. So when I'm hiring someone, I kind of like to know what their influences have been. And if I get the sense that they're coming from a background of like, we're looking for a way to deny this, like that's off the table for me. I mean, I need someone who is willing to find the coverage and look at the policy and say, this is how, this is how the policy is interpreted and it's designed to, find the coverage, not to exclude it. So, I think I look for that kind of not open-mindedness, but just an understanding of the technical aspect of it. And also, I think someone who's eager to learn, that's important to me. Maybe because it resonates with me personally, but I came up in the industry kind of always looking for what else is there, what pieces, what little nuggets can I grab that will help me be more well-rounded as a professional, help me understand different points of view, education. I'm really big into the institute's education, CPCU. I was the president of my CPCU chapter when I was in Rhode Island, and now I'm the treasurer in Boston. And those have been opportunities that have given me information and knowledge and perspectives that you really can't get when you're just sitting handling claims. Mm-hmm. So I think it's natural for a hiring manager to sort of look for similar characteristics in other people when they're hiring. And so that's sort of at like an adjusting level. I like to see that intellectual curiosity and people who are just kind of willing to learn. And then, I also like, from a promotional perspective, just being able to get people prepared to be promoted from within and to really kind of give them opportunities to kind of expand what they've been working on and challenge them a little bit so they might be ready for another opportunity. So try and work on that as often as we possibly can as well.
One thing that has come up a few times with guests on this podcast is talking about hiring and the emphasis on having a college degree in order to work, to work in claims. And I'm not holding. I don't want to put you. I am putting you on the spot, sort of. But
I like this question, actually.
But yeah, how are what do you think about that? Like, do you think, in your position, do you need to see that someone on your team has a college degree in order to sit in the position of claims? If they have a claims history, they've been working in claims for a number of years, they're experienced, so they check all the other boxes, but maybe they don't check that, okay, I have a bachelor's degree box. Is that something that you consider or you don't consider, or the claims experience trumps the degree experience?
I think every candidate is different in the sense that I would never say it's yes or no. It's definitely a piece of the puzzle, but I will say that I am not on team bachelor degree. Like, I'm big on my own education, and that's been important for me. I got my master's in insurance, like full insurance nerd status, like to bring it all the way. But for others, that piece of it, to me, the piece of paper doesn't say as much to me as it does to other people. Part of this, again, everyone kind of brings their own experiences. My youngest, our son, did not go to college. He graduated from high school and started his own business, designing houses, and he got his building license and started building houses when he was in high school, literally, and then decided, I could either go to school to be an architect or I could just keep doing this thing. And he's 24 right now. He just built us a house.
That's awesome.
House, and he's doing amazing things in this world without that formal education. And so I tend to bring that perspective when I'm hiring on my own. And I remember even saying when I was at Pure, I was hiring for a candidate, and it was like sort of a default box that said must have a college degree. And I went to HR. I was like, do you mind if I uncheck that? I feel like I would like to open that up to other people to say, tell me what you've done in this industry and your experiences, and demonstrate to me your technical expertise. And I'm fine with that. I even go to the extent of when I've hired a few people recently that we'll actually give them sort of like a quiz, like an estimate writing quiz, and say, can you tell me what's wrong with this or what's right with this estimate? And so we're going at the technical, don't just sit in front of my camera on Zoom and tell me if in 30 minutes in a speed dating kind of environment, why I deserve this job. It's like, you really can't prove who you are unless you really start getting into showing that the technical understanding of what we need to get done here. So I am 100% open-minded to experience over the piece of paper, but also if someone has it, great, perfect. Totally admire that as well.
I mean, let's face it. While, obviously I have a bachelor's degree, I have a law degree, but I don't use my bachelor's degree. It's even going into it, college was a great experience, and I was really into the learning aspect of it as well. But it was also, it was an experience, a life experience for me. And I've had this argument with my brother all the time too, because he's anti-college, and I would never say I'm anti-college, but I'm I think college is important because of the whole experience around it. Not just, I think you should go and major in something that makes sense. Don't do what I did, but at least that's what I'm going to tell my kids.
Yeah.
But I just think the experience itself kind of shapes you, and is just part of your life, but it's not necessarily the degree part. I don't think necessarily impacts the career part, because let's face it, I'm a lawyer now because I didn't know what else I could do, so I went to law school.
Right. And
finds their path, right?
Yes.
And Meghan and I have talked about this before, that we both went to liberal arts focused colleges where you learn for the sake of learning, right? Which I think is a crucial part of that intellectual curiosity, right? That most of our guests talk about, and kind of what you were just saying, that it's such an important part of hiring someone, to want someone who's going to learn more, who kind of craves to learn more. And
Right.
so it certainly fostered that, but at a very high price tag.
Right. And what's it for if you don't plan to use it for anything else? And that was the argument we used with our son, is like, don't just go just because that's what all your friends like. We had families that were like pressuring us, like, why aren't you making him go? We couldn't understand that pressure of just going. Like, he's figured out what he wants to do. He's very good at it. He's earning income. And he's learned some really hard lessons as being self-employed at the age of like 18 through 24, life lessons that you will not find in a classroom. So, and also he's missed out on some of the structured learning. So there's definitely the pros and cons to it. And I think that one of the best things it demonstrates is your attention span. 4 years in a classroom, I can follow through with a thing that means like I go from the beginning to the end, which I think is one of the probably more important pieces of it for hiring managers. Like, you know, you committed to something and then you follow through, and, you know, but within it, like, could you really recite what you learned? Could you pass exams from things that, like, no, those things are gone from I was an English major, like poetry. What am I doing with poetry and insurance? Nothing.
Yeah. Well, yes. This Gemma, were you Spanish?
I was a Spanish and Latin American studies major.
Yeah, exactly. Very interesting.
It was super interesting. I got to spend some time abroad. I got to learn a whole bunch of different things, but like,
yeah. That's
about
it. That's great.
Yeah, but I also think even just the planning, like as you're saying, the planning aspect being like, okay, for this major, for me to complete this major or this double major, I need to do X, Y, and Z. So you need to like plan it out, and that is an important skill. You can't just pick it up and let it go, otherwise you're not going to get to your end game. But you know, I think that's an important life skill. But you can also get there other ways.
And I think sometimes like a formal classroom is not the best. Like my son, he's only 7, but he has ADHD and he really struggles to sit all day in a classroom. But he is probably the smartest person I've ever met in my entire life. And like the insightful things that come out of that kid's mouth, I like, where did you pick that up?
Right.
So, I mean, so sometimes it's not, you know, formal education is not a good indicator of somebody's abilities.
Completely agree. And I think that we probably do not as great of a job as a society just understanding those differences and being able to figure out ways to help people thrive outside of a traditional classroom. Like, think about a classroom. This is kind of like, I'm going off topic a little bit. There's like,
we always do.
Classroom has not changed format or like shape or anything. Like, picture old fashioned classrooms from like little red schoolhouses.
Yeah, the one room schoolhouse.
In rows with one person standing at the top, and you have to sit still for 8 hours a day. Like, why hasn't that changed? Like, everything, the world has changed, kids have changed, needs have changed, and our understanding of their brains has changed. And so to kind of put them in that structured environment without any kind of consideration of unique individual learning styles is so antiquated. I could go on and on, but
it also translates over to the office environment too, though, because I think we are now becoming more accustomed to not having very strict 9-to-5 type schedules for like a variety of reasons, whether it be like that individual has to, you know, adjust their schedule for their family or for childcare reasons, or, you know, some people work better like late at night. Some people work better very early in the morning. And while I think there still should be an expectation that people are available during the traditional working hours, I feel like we were as a whole becoming more accustomed to, you know, different working schedules, because it's just not every schedule, not that 9-to-5 doesn't necessarily work for everybody.
Right. That old fashioned work environment, I think from like my parents' era was, you know, dad went to work, mom stayed home, and like the 9-to-5 was basically like just the norm because it was just one group of people who were going into that office. And now, because of how much that's changed, and it's sort of, if you don't figure that out, you're not going to retain talent. So
right.
It's nice. It's refreshing to see it changing and switching a little bit.
Well, and
I will say, oh, go ahead.
I find like claims is like a perfect environment for that as well. I mean, when I was handling claims, I would wake up at 5 and work for like 3 hours before my kids woke up. And it was nice. The phone didn't ring. I got like 3 hours of solid work in the quiet, and it was fantastic. And so I think it really does foster that ability to work on your own time, because it really does. As long as you're there for customers or clients or whoever during the day, that's great for a period of time. But I loved working on my own schedule.
I know, and I talk to college students sometimes. I'm affiliated with my alma mater, which is Bridgewater State University in Bridgewater, Mass. And I go and I do like some guest lectures and like just visit the classroom. And there's a woman who wrote one of the CPCU textbooks that is a professor there, and she has a finance class, and she has us come in to talk about the insurance industry, because it's obviously, as everyone knows, we're struggling to get that younger talent purposefully driven towards the insurance career, and pick up a little bit of traction. But when we go in, we talk to a finance classroom, we're kind of trying to help them understand the differences between insurance and like a traditional finance path, where it could be kind of cutthroat. Like I've heard people say like they're starting at 5 a.m. and not finishing until 10 p.m. Right? Like you have to be, really on your game for that kind of a career. And maybe, some people are interested in that, but I try and highlight that flexibility and how, you make your own. I mean, it's not like having your own business, but you're managing your own desk. You have control over when you make your appointments and managing your paperwork. And when you get it done, you have the right kind of culture at work. You don't have someone who's breathing down your neck saying like, why did your little bubble go yellow? You're supposed to be working like every minute of the 8 hours, like that. Yeah. It just doesn't happen in a healthy insurance culture. So I try and help people see that value, that you can start to family life and things like that as the needs change over the years.
And I think back now, I wish I knew really about the insurance industry when I was graduating college, because if I had someone like you coming in and explaining to me, oh, this is a potential path. Because to me, I saw the people, in the finance background and interviewing in the investment banks. And I was like, well, that's their deal. Like, I can't do that. But I had a math background. I didn't have a finance background, but I had a math background. And I think had I had someone come in and talk to me about, being an actuary or I had no clue. I just thought the only other option was to get a PhD like that.
Exactly. But I don't think the older generations weren't very career focused either. So they didn't do a lot of educating in that. I think there was probably like people in the guidance departments who would say, here, take this quiz and you'll find out what you're most, need to be successful in or something like that, but I think this generation is just a little bit more curious because it's sort of like automatic. I'm going to have a career out of college, and, there have to be 2 incomes, to support a household these days. So it's like people are looking at their career paths a lot more broadly, I think. And so I think that's where we have opportunities to just sort of get out there and kind of advertise the benefits of kind of considering this path. And, there are some people that have definitely been curious and kind of raised their hand and asked for more information and kind of tried to follow it down. And we've given some, either not at where I am now, but internship possibilities or just mentorship kind of situations where they can learn a little bit more about it. So it's cool. It's nice to see that shift.
Yeah, and I do think the younger kids these days see so many different career options too, because they see kids making full-time incomes on YouTube. So they're like, well, you don't have just these 3 paths anymore. There's lots of opportunities available, some realistic and some not.
Oh, my son, the other day he said to me, he's like, I'm going to be a YouTuber. And I was like, that's fine, buddy. If you want to be a YouTuber. He's like, I'm not going to college. And I said, you do know though, that I'm not going to support you. Will you try to be a YouTuber for 3 years? And he's like, you won't?
What do you mean?
No. And he's like, what if I go be a coder and I code for video games and then I do YouTube? And I was like, that sounds like a much better plan. And he's like, okay, I'm going to be a coder.
Or you could start YouTubing now. Well, and you have to support him anyway.
That was his other his other option. But he
dream big, buddy. That's all you say. Dream big. That's great.
my husband told him that he can have a phone. He wants a cell phone so he can start recording himself. I'm like, you're 8. And he said, what if I design and build my own phone? Would you let me have it? And I was like, yes, absolutely. So he said, and you're a lawyer, right? He's like, so can you like trademark or copyright everything that I come up with? And I was like, absolutely. So he's starting his phone design.
I love that. See, that's how our son got into doing his own thing, because he was building Legos. He kept saying like, can you we buy him some Legos. He's like, all right, well, I mastered this level. What do I get to the next one? And he kind of maxed out on like the architecture series. And we were like, I was an adjuster at the time. And I was like, you need Xactimate. Like, I can't give you what you need. And so he said he found a program. It was like a CAD program. And he went out and he said, well, if I do this, can I buy this if I can sell these plans and I can pay back my investment? And he's like, I'll design the houses and then I'll sell, so yeah, it's the same exact thing. It's just, you're so innately curious about, just anything. Everything's possible at that age. So it's like, if you jump on that, it can go anywhere. It's awesome. That's really exciting.
Wait, so how old was he when he was doing that?
He was so young. I mean, like, I think the Lego stuff started when he was like 8, but he mowed lawns in the neighborhood. And he's always been this little entrepreneur, and he would go door to door and he'd give out his business card, and he called himself the Grassinator, which was super cute. So it was like a picture of like a kid mowing a lawn. So that was the first, like, he just loved having money, he was really motivated by the cash. So, and then when we started getting into the designing, he saw other people that were doing the same thing. And he's like, they sell these for a lot of money. I can do this. And I remember driving him around town. He didn't have his license yet. And he'd be like, he'd see a house being built. He's like, can you stop the car so I can talk to that builder? I just want to let him know I design houses so I can buy them. And then he just started an Instagram account, and then off he went. And he's doing like, he designed a house. I might be misquoting this. He's going to kill me if I get this wrong, but
he might have to review the podcast too.
He designed a house for the creator of Fortnite out in Utah. Like, so he's gotten some really good connections throughout the years, and he's kind of an introvert, which is amazing because he's got like this amazing network, and people just saw a young kid who was curious and just like really motivated, and they all just sort of like got behind him and said like, this kid needs to do bigger things, and he just did. So it's kind of like a cool story.
That's amazing.
It was fun.
So one thing I wanted to touch on though, because before we run out of time, is I know when you and I were talking initially before the podcast, is you had said that in the last few years you got really into personal development, and like furthering your own personal development. So, and I wanted to make sure we touched on that because you were pretty passionate about it. So what spurred this, and talk to us a little bit about it.
So I think that the biggest part of it is the change and the transformation that I have seen, or I guess my perspective of personal development has changed over the years. And I think what started our conversation was we were talking about mentorship and how important that role that is in someone's career. And I just remember like in the beginning, kind of seeing development as like walking into a room and saying, all right, I wonder what they need to hear from me today. Mm-hmm. And then it has completely transitioned into what can I offer this room today? Instead, and it becomes this very authentic kind of representation of who I am. And I think that it comes with time and experience, and also being in a culture that is very open to hearing people and just wanting to know exactly what people have to say and to think. And so I feel like that when you can reach this level, it feels like a gift, because it's no longer kind of like, the burden of what do I need to be for everyone today. It's more about like, okay, who am I and what am I bringing to the table? And then I feel like it naturally transitions into kind of helping other people reach that same point. And it doesn't happen the same way for everyone. But I think that when I look back to a younger part of my career, when I had some people, whether they were mentors or they were like just managers, kind of there's all these little nuggets that I look back to and I say like, man, if I had interpreted that properly at the time, I might have reached this spot a little bit faster. Yeah. Or if I was open to that, or I guess just, I don't even know, like you can't go back in time and change it. So I guess it's just part of the path. But I guess I'm just more grateful that I've arrived at this place. And now it becomes, what can I do with that? And how can I be the most authentic person I am to my leadership role, and then hopefully to others, so that they can kind of find their way in the industry.
Now, when you were like going through this growth, this personal growth, like how did you approach it? Like, was it just like, were you reading certain books? Were you attending seminars? Or was it just internal processing? Like, what was your process?
I think my default process was always go find more learning, go find things to learn and do, and the education piece. So I piled a lot of that on in a very short period of time. Part of that was because I started my career later than most of my peers, and I felt like I had some catching up to do, and I wanted to kind of feel like, all right, now I'm where I probably would have been anyway. And maybe that's like my own little internal race. But at the same time, I think that the biggest factor that I had was a turning point that I can't remember, Megan, if you and I talked about this and like when we chatted earlier, but I had a moment in my first week of work when I transitioned companies. I had been with one company for a really long time, and I transitioned over. And I was sort of like in the first week of training, and I was sort of like sitting in the back of the room and minding my own business. And there was a like a large loss kind of review presentation going on. The whole company was invited, and it was the kind of thing that happened once a month. You talk about the biggest cases in the company, and everyone kind of mostly in leadership roles would contribute their opinions about maybe implications from an agency perspective, or underwriting, or actuarial claims, obviously, and just kind of have some bigger minds at work, the hive mind, just try to figure out the best potential outcomes. So I had read the case, and I was sitting in the back, and I was thinking about it, like, my perspectives and everything. And literally, like, I think third or fourth day on the job. And it came to the kind of like end of the conversation, and the CEO turned around from the front row of the room, and he looked at me, and he goes, "Megan, what do you think we should do?" And I hate and love to tell this story equally because of the outcome, but I literally froze. I was not accustomed to being asked for my opinion, first of all. So I was like, I had always been in I'm here to learn, not to teach kind of situation. So I wasn't like prepared to speak. I had read the case, but I just wasn't. I froze, and I think I said something like, "I agree," like the last person said, right? Like the worst, like not just a terrible, awkward answer. Like I had so many things in my mind to say, but I just froze because I wasn't prepared to speak it in that environment. So why I hate and love the story is because it's so cringy, but at the same time, after like crying and being embarrassed for like I gave myself like 2 days. And then after that, I was like, okay, I am a new person. This will change me. And the reason it will change me is because I will never again walk into a room unprepared to have a thought and share a comment and be just willing to kind of share what my perspective is, because it has value in this room. And that person told me I was there for a reason. I was not there to be a silent participant in the back row with one hand on the suitcase, ready to walk out the door. I'm here for a purpose. And so it just changed everything about my willingness and openness to kind of be authentic and share an idea. So those types of moments, I think, are pivotal in the way that I have developed over time. And sometimes it takes like something that cringy in order to kind of like grow into that spot. But I honestly can say I've never been the same since, and I'm grateful for it. And I try and help other people kind of get to that point, hopefully without as much discomfort. But I will push things back on people and I'll say, you tell me what you think we should do here, instead of me just always telling people as a leader.
Yes.
It's not my job to just tell people what to do. I need to draw it out of you. It's like what we do as parents, right? Like, what do you think? And so that's how people, I think, grow the most. And I think that's been the biggest impact that I've had.
I love that story, and you did share it with me, and I was hoping you would share it. I was trying to like get you to share it without me directly asking. Drawn out of you.
Yeah.
But in that moment, though, I imagine too what you're also feeling like, at least how I would feel too, is like, well, I don't know if what I'm going to say is what they want to hear, if it's going to be right. So I'd rather not say it at all, and that there, you have to grow from that, right? And it also stems from being like, trying to say the thing that you think they want to hear versus what you believe is what you believe should be the response to that. And you're not trying to please the listener. You're trying to express your opinion or your thoughts or your analysis on the situation.
For sure. And I think when you stop seeing leadership as some kind of like a superior power and just see them as more of like, wow, that person is really bright and they've gotten to this leadership position because of all of these, contributions and everything else. They're not better than anyone in the room, and they would never pretend to be. So why am I intimidated by that? What is that? That's sort of like something internally that I worked on and said, like this is something that I should never, let me hold. I shouldn't let that hold me back. And it's also, it gives me a little bit of a different perspective being in a leadership position, that I never want anyone else to feel that way in a room with me. I want people to feel safe to be able to raise their hand and say they disagree with me. I have no problem with people disagreeing with me. I don't want people to feel like they can't make a mistake. I want ideas, even if I don't use them, I will welcome them all. We can put them in the bank, and maybe not today, but at some point in time. And so there's so many different layers and little tidbits to take from a situation like that.
And it's like similar to, we talk about all the time, like when you are, writing an update to a client and evaluating a claim, and you have to write it as to what, sure, you want to know what your client's win is, but you also don't want to people please in your reporting and just say things that you think is going to make them happy. If you're misreporting or misanalyzing, or if you think, okay, this is the best course of action for this case, you need to say it rather than being, well, I know they like giving them the answers that you think they might want to hear. Because in the end, that's probably going to screw you.
As a leader, like we can tell the difference anyway, and that's more frustrating as a client, because we want the real story. Tell me it's good. Tell me it's bad. I don't care either way, but don't flip flop on me at the courthouse steps and tell me like,
yes,
here. So we're going to have to do something different. I want to know what it is. And that sort of goes back to that technical kind of side of things when we're handling claims. Like, tell me if I have to pay a claim that's really a high value, it is what it is. That's what the policy is there for. It's not bad news. It's just the outcome that we need to have. So we'd like to get there.
And I feel like we as women tend to be people pleasers in general. And that's like a hard burden to overcome. And I, along with my son, I have two daughters. They're both 10 and 12. And I'm trying to not have them be people pleasers, right? And the one day my husband said, and he is trying to instill confidence in them, and especially my 10-year-old, yesterday she said, she's like, I'm good at math. And I said, yes, you are. Like, that's like, acknowledge that. And he's a surgeon and he said, I have to be confident. He's like, do you want a surgeon in the OR who wavers on a decision when they're making it? He's like, no, I need to be like, this is the decision and this is what happened. This is what's happening right now. And I try to take some of that with me, into what I'm doing. It's like, okay, like, no, I'm 16 years out of law school. I've been doing this a long time. I know what I'm doing, but there's like always that little people pleaser in the background that's like, no. So it's just trying to do it yourself and then teach others how to do it.
And there's a lot of like innate kind of female component to, being in the business world that I think it's great to be in touch with who we are, like as females, because we are very different than males, but we also have to kind of survive in the same environment. And to just be like the submissive, I'll do whatever, that doesn't work. And, so there's an interesting balance there that you kind of have to figure out when it works and when it doesn't. And just raising females, like you don't want them to get lost in that, but it's not always palatable for everyone to see a female in a powerful position, and it comes across in a different way. So it's definitely an interesting dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm just tailing off of that too. I just thought of this as recently I was doing an evaluation for a client, and I'm looking at all the stuff that was happening before the case was filed, and the notes are all pointing to like they're looking at all these angles and trying to see this case as defensible, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, I really think this can just get done for like a very low number, and I just don't think it's worth for like us to drum up these costs. And but it's hard because I'm reading the notes and I'm like, they clearly want to defend this case, but I just think, why are you going to pay me $40,000 to defend this case, to pay pretty much the same amount in the end? But you have to kind of struggle through, because I'm like, I could just give them what they want to hear, not necessarily what they want to hear, but what seems to be what the messaging is coming in, versus like what I'm like, look, if you could probably kick this out for way less than you're going to pay me to do it, why don't we just try that first? We don't even need to file an answer. Let's just try to resolve it. And I think we can do it for a low sum. But the old, younger me would have just probably read the the claims notes and all the prior stuff, and just kind of like gone along course.
Yeah.
And then you just have to grow a little bit and realize, no, I think this is the better plan for this particular situation.
Which we always appreciate, by the way, because if someone's, understands that they're not going to bill $40,000 and they're just going to settle it, like, that's music to my ears, but that's the most likely outcome. I'd rather get there sooner than later. Yeah.
And lo and behold, I talked to the attorney yesterday, and looks like we're going to settle it pretty low. Yep. Well, Meghan, we're just about out of time, but I wanted to close up and ask you this. And I ask this of pretty much everyone who comes on this podcast. Knowing what you know now, and through all the experiences that you've gone through in your career, and even, prior to stepping into your career, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I mean, I don't know if I would have listened to my own advice, to be honest. I think that's my most honest answer, is that's what I've sort of come to realize, is that I think most people will get to a point in time on their own terms and on their own time. And I think being the most authentic, the advice would be your most authentic that you can possibly be. And if you're looking around a room and you don't feel authentic in that space, it might not be a perfect match. I mean, like, a company can be a fantastic company, but it might not be a perfect match. It's like a relationship that you're in, or a friendship or whatever, pick an analogy. But if it's not a good fit, then maybe it's time to move on. And so I think that when you can be, and you can find your most authentic self, then, and it's such an overused term, but I think I've come to like actually understand what it means, like to just say what you really truly feel you can offer, and find value in it. And the people in the room respond in a really positive way, and it's encouraged. That's the environment where you're going to grow the most. And it might not just be one place either. It could be in multiple different places. But I think that that's a really important piece of growth, is being able to be yourself and to surround yourself with a really supportive network that is very diverse in experience and age and stage of career and input, and potentially even some things that are like, not what you want to hear, seek out opinions that might have your opinions, because all of that contributes to what I see in my brain as like one enormous puzzle that we're all working on, and just putting a piece in here and put a piece in here. And like I've said to so many young people, if you ever get to the point where you're done with that puzzle, like share their secret with the rest of the world, because we're all just working on something that we're never going to finish. And it's okay. It's like, that's part of this journey is like, what's the point when you finish the puzzle? It's like, what else is there, right? Not just career-wise, like life. So as long as you're always like contributing and putting another piece of that puzzle, and it means you're learning, and it means like you've, kind of taken something away from those experiences. So I just think that age and experience and just time on this planet is really the kind of secret sauce to figuring out as much as you can.
Yeah. And I think they're also exactly that. Like, you're not going to have it all figured out to start, because you're going to have to make a lot of mistakes in order to figure all the things out. And those mistakes are okay. You just have to learn from them.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Well, Meghan, thank you so much for joining us. I adore you. You're so smart too. I'm like, I could listen to Meghan talk all day. Give us advice on how to be a better person and grow. But of course, for all our listeners out there, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to Claims Never Sleep. You can find us on your favorite streaming platform as well as YouTube. Thanks for tuning in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.